Hey everybody, it's Fabrizio Aiello, Creative Horse H. Hoover, and today I'm going to do a quick video on how to go through the website, grab the STL print file, and possibly use a 3D printing service if you don't have a 3D printer yourself. So the first thing you want to do is go to the website, go to the store. The website's changed a little bit. I've added quite a bit of stuff, but you want to go to comics, and then there's two print files. There's a simple and the more complex. I'll start with the more complex. This has 5 pieces, and I have some photos here to show you what the 5 pieces combined will look like in the it's a program called Chi2 Box for 3D printing. Okay, so you want to add that to your cart. Once that's added, you'll notice it's unhallowedart.com. That's the company name, so that's what the cart will look like. Go to checkout. You want to put the discount code, which is HHH Mini. Apply that, and you'll see it's at $0. So once you go through the whole process, you'll get a 3D file in the mail. It'll be an STL file or a zip file that has 5 STL files in it, and each of those are used to print. So once you receive that, again, if you have a 3D printer, you know, you should know what to do at that point. If you don't have a 3D printer, you can use a 3D printing service. And recently I've used Etsy for 3D printing. Again, I wanted to go through the whole process that way. I could at least recommend some services and see how they work to give some people a little guidance on this. So if you go to Etsy and you just search for resin printing, you'll get a bunch of options here. And if you don't know anything about 3D printing, that's not a problem. Keep a few things in mind for these services. There's 2 things to look at. One is the resolution. So basically these 3D printers use a monitor basically, and the higher the resolution, the better the print. Usually, sometimes the monitor will be really big, so it needs a higher resolution, but just go through, there's a bunch of different services. You'll see 8K resin printing, you know, custom 8K resin 3D printing, etc., etc. So you can go through here. I think I've seen some that are up to 12K resolution. And I'll just show you the one that I've used, but I'm going to use other ones just to test them out. So the one that I used is called 3D Printing BC, and it's an 8K resin 3D printer, and they have some sample prints here. And basically what you do is you'll start a direct, like a DM with them, and you'll upload the files, the STL files. They'll take a look at those files, and then they'll basically give you a quote based on the size that you want. And from there, it's good to keep in mind that you can basically make them whatever size you want. So, you know, these STL files are scalable, and depending on the limitations of the 3D printer, you can potentially get a 10-inch 3D print of Horace H. Hoover if you wanted, if the 3D printing service offers it, or a very, very small 1-inch Horace H. Hoover Mini. So I would say if you want to experiment with that stuff, please go ahead. I mean, it's not cheap, but it's not too expensive. So I would say kind of play around with, you know, your ideal. Use some of these services if you want, and go from there. And basically what they'll do is they'll give you a quote, and then that'll be the price that you select here to pay. Now, when I used this 3D Printing BC company, I think it was about 2 weeks to do the print, and then it was probably another 2 weeks for actually to track the shipping. So total was about 4 weeks, but it was a good quality print. It may require some additional cleanup when you get it. Something to keep in mind is when you do get it, resin is a toxic material when it's curing, and depending on the service you get, you want to make sure it's 100% cured so it doesn't feel sticky, you know, whenever you get it. If that's the case, again, you can Google how to cure 3D prints, but honestly, UVs cure them. So you can place them outside in a sunny day to make sure they get some UVs for a half hour or an hour or something like that. Or if you have some UV lights, you can use that. That's the basics. If you have any questions, I can, again, recommend things, but these aren't my companies. I don't know all of these services, but I can probably help you kind of go through the process a little bit. If you have any questions, let me know in the chat, or I'm available on Instagram or DM. Thanks a lot.